Well, my name is Steve Summers, and I actually work in our aerospace and defense team, but I'm our cybersecurity lead. And because aerospace and defense cared about cybersecurity long before the other other industries, I've kind of been tagged with leading the effort for NI. When I say that, I mean primarily on the customer-facing side. So I've been the one that's been trying to collect requirements and understand what customers want, and then I bring that back to the R&D teams and work with them. And they've been very responsive in understanding and working towards the meeting the requirements that have come up. So in here today, there's a couple of our engineers. So Evan Cohn is actually our CRA point of contact. He's our main R&D manager. He works with our R&D teams to make sure that they're falling in line and complying and getting all the work done that needs to be done, mapping all that out. Alex Stewart works on our NI-Linux RT, focuses a lot on the cybersecurity for our embedded systems for Compact Radio and for PXI. But then we have our presenters, and that is Sarah Zalusky and Morgan Hopkins, and I'm glad to have them here. And I'll introduce kind of what their role is. I'm going to go very quick over my part, which is just, we have had these other presentations where we've been making you aware of what's coming with some of the cybersecurity regulations with CRA and CMMC. And just generally in the world, there's a lot of paranoia right now about cybersecurity. And there should be, because there's a lot of increasing threats. And so we need to be making our test systems more secure. Again, these other presentations I've given have been to try to scare you into caring about it. Now that you care about it, what do? And that's what this presentation is intended to start to address, which is, as a LabVIEW developer, how do you develop secure code? How do you develop a secure approach to developing LabVIEW code? And so as we work through my other presentations, this is the main takeaway that I hope you all take with you, is that there are 2 action items for everybody in test engineering right now with regards to security. The first thing is check your supply chains. Make sure that your suppliers that you rely on are working towards compliance with the certification requirements for you, if that's CRA or if that's CMMC or whatever it is. I get probably 2 or 3 surveys a day right now from our customers asking us to fill out 20 to 30 pages about why we're secure. It's attached to orders, so if they want to buy LabVIEW, we have to explain all the things we've done to make LabVIEW secure. And you should be going to your suppliers and demanding that kind of responsibility for anything that you're buying right now. Honestly, as I've talked to a lot of the other suppliers in the test and measurement market, many of them are completely blind to the CRA and CMMC requirements and aren't doing anything. They won't do it because I tell them about it, and I kind of don't want to because they're my competitors. But you need to be pushing on them and telling them that they need to provide cybersecurity to you. The other thing is that this is a shared responsibility. Yeah, comment.
Do you have something you can give us all? Because now tomorrow we're all going to go ask NI for this. So is there something you've got pre-prepared that's the 20-page response?
Kind of. So if you go to ni.com/security, there are documents there that help to do that. But the problem I'm finding is that those 20 pages are not the same between different companies. And so we're trying to ingest all of those. We're using AI to do that, to kind of ingest all those and create the responses back. But it's your procurement teams that care about this, and they don't know what you do, and they send us questions that are really not appropriate. But no, we don't, because we haven't seen a consensus yet, we don't have that. I have a bunch of documents. So I have a document that is about our supply chain, what we do to prevent anti-counterfeit, for example. What is our approach for secure development? So you can say, yes, NI does that. So I have all that stuff, but I don't know what you need exactly. So as we get closer to that, yes. So the other thing is that this is a shared responsibility. So we're doing everything that we can to be secure. There's a lot you have to do to be secure as well. I can give you LabVIEW and I can make it as secure as possible, and there's things that you can program that make it totally not secure. So what do you have to do? And the first step is what we're asking you to do is to implement a secure development framework for what the work that you do. You need to be serious about this and creating that framework. And hopefully what comes out of this presentation today is exactly how to do that. So I want to first turn the time over to Morgan Hopkins. Morgan works at Thales in the UK. And he works specifically in a cybersecurity group. That's what they focus on is consulting with clients to help them adopt cybersecurity. The reason I'm working with Morgan is because his focus is on operational technology, not on information technology. So he's not focused on trying to make your email server more secure. He's focused on engineering systems. So that's an expertise that I feel is kind of lacking generally. But he's going to show you a process, and that's what I want you to kind of pick up from this is there is a process and a way to approach this. And Morgan's going to walk you through that. So I'll give the mic to Morgan, and he's going to walk us through that part.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
If I can figure it out. There we go. So I'm going to pop that there.
So yes, hi everyone. Morgan Hopkins. Thank you for the intro, Steve. And yeah, within the operational technology domain, as Steve said, I'm not so fussed about IT computers. If my email goes down for a day, that's an absolute win. But we want to keep safety critical systems and engineering systems functioning as they should be. So I'll talk at a relatively high level today around secure by design as we deem it, what that means for us, and hopefully there's going to be some key takeaways, and then Sarah's going to get into a lot more of the LabVIEW specific stuff, and that's really exciting. So you've got me for 20 minutes first. So before I cover this slide in detail, secure by design, as the name implies, is building security in from the start. And at Thales, our key sentiment with our customers and partners is to shift left the cyber thinking and extend it right and have it be a continuous part of that process through life. So I'll talk about that in a bit more detail with the engineering V model as well in a moment, but that's going to be the sort of key sentiment from me. So cyber engineering as part of secure by design is becoming part of everybody's life. I was quite encouraged to hear how much cyber conversation there was this week as a pure cyber guy. And it's very quickly just going to become standard engineering practice. It's not going to be sort of cyber and engineers, hopefully, and the way it's going, regulations pushing it that way, just good engineering will include cybersecurity, fact. So we'll hopefully focus on some practical concepts. And again, the goal of secure by design is to be secure, resilient, and consistently and reliably deliver whatever it is that all you clever people are delivering. So on this slide, for us, what is cyber engineering? So there's a lovely thing on the right there. We talk about it being a risk-based approach, but the risk-based approach should be defined by objectives and not constrained by specific methods or tools. So it has to be appropriate and relevant, the controls. There's no point just slamming a load of stuff on that's completely unnecessary. So from our perspective, you need to understand it through life and ensure that there's appropriate measures at each stage within that cycle. So we focus on protecting what matters most. So a lot of the time in the early stage of this concept, we use the term crown jewels. What's the most important part of this system or this production line or this project that would have the highest risk associated and focus there first. And choosing the controls based on those risks, not just because a piece of paper says, thou shalt do this, this, and this, because that's not practical. And often that's where we see a big divide from the IT and the cyber folk and then the engineering teams, because it sort of sits in this weird no man's land trench where IT think it's the engineers' problem to fix. The engineers think, well, this is cyber, so I'll let the IT guys deal with that. And doing nothing is not going to be acceptable in the very near future. So, moving through. So, this is our SDL, or secure design lifecycle, sorry. And on the left here, we've got the traditional sort of engineering V diagram. It talks about everything from concept all the way through to validation testing, and in some cases, you have to maintain these systems all the way through to decommissioning. And security should be integrated at every single stage of this V model. So when you're initially coming up with a concept for a new thing, a widget, a system of systems, shifting left, again, I mentioned it right at the start, shifting the cyber thinking all the way left. What we often find is something's been made, it's then pumped out to the real world, and it's like, oh, we probably should have thought about some cyber, and it's all retrospective, and it's being done on a brownfield sort of estate. Particularly in the OT world, where we're working with systems that were sort of designed and built in the 70s, 80s, 90s if you're lucky. And there's all these legacy things that were designed and built without the internet in mind. It's now being connected because data is the new oil. Everybody wants insights at their fingertips. Obviously, you couldn't think about it then, but all the connected products now are, you have to consider it. So again, on the requirements phase, looking at identifying misuse and threats early. Another thing that I'll say, and hopefully will stick in your minds, is to sort of, from an engineering perspective, think evil. So not only what is the functionality of this thing I'm building or this thing I'm doing, but how could it be misused, or how could it be used in a malicious way or with malicious intent? What does that look like? What is the impact of that? And that would hopefully help identify some of what those appropriate controls and measures could look like then when you take that through the V. So yeah, design phase, think evil. Implementation phase, assess suppliers. We talked a lot about supply chain. I'm not going to hammer that for much longer because I think it's all been reinforced today, but supply chain is really important. And then through testing phase, again, testing failure and abuse scenarios. So once you've got a thing and you're testing it, can you test it from a cyber perspective? Do you have a business continuity plan or a cyber incident plan associated with how this thing or this system will be used? It's great if you've got one. Most people don't. It's even better if you then exercise it and make sure it works, so you can assess what the potential damage or outcome could be if something bad did happen. And the SDL should run alongside the typical engineering phases. So looking at the cyber engineering process flow in a little bit more detail. I appreciate you probably can't all read that great, but they're available for download I think they're getting sent out, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, or they're available for download on the website afterwards. But stage one, identifying critical assets and understanding what those security goals are. And then you can start looking at those appropriate controls that I've already talked about. Risk equals likelihood and impact. So you need to assess, is this a actual risk, or is it just that somebody says, oh, this could happen? So undertaking that sort of analysis is really important, and the context really matters when you're looking at those cyber risks. And we talk a lot about the CVEs, the common vulnerability exploits, and in some cases, particularly in the OT world, where you've got a PLC or a bit of SCADA equipment that's been in a customer or partner's estate since 1992. It's old kit. It's going to have CVEs. It's going to be exploitable. But the context element of that is, if it just because it says it's a 10 out of 10 cyber risk, doesn't mean it's a 10 out of 10 business risk. And to give an example of that, it could be that there's a 0 day was discovered, and it's now a month later, and everyone's screaming about it, and it's all in the news. But in reality, it's only going to impact your coffee machine. I live on caffeine, so it would be a problem for me. But it's probably not as important as a nuclear power cooling system to make sure a reactor doesn't go into meltdown. But that could just be a 3 out of 10. So again, context really matters, especially in OT, because a lot of the time things are going to look worse than they are. So again, cyber engineering should, and the way it's going will, just mirror good engineering practices. Bless you. So on this slide here, we talk about, this is what we call the House of Resilience. So from our perspective, it's talking about, from a governance perspective and from a process perspective, these things done in isolation just don't work, and they need to be done together to, be effective. It's no good having great IT, information security management systems, and absolutely nothing in OT and test, or nothing on your product cycle or no safety. I mean, if you have no safety processes, you're probably be out of business anyway. But all of these things together create that sort of overall view of resilience and a good sort of secure by design approach. And it's probably worth noting that secure by design isn't something you can just go out and buy over the counter. It's not like a silver bullet thing. It's much more of a mindset, and it consists of doing all of these things well, and then you can sort of classify that as we are secure by design. At least that's my take. So on this House of Resilience, we're talking about a few things up on the top left here around NIS2, and obviously there's the EU CRA coming. It's just to highlight that regulation and legislation has been around for a while. We talk about NIS2 from 2018. It's only getting worse. It's getting, well, not worse, but more cumbersome. It's becoming more detailed as I think everybody is sort of waking up now to the cyber threat and how real it is. But some of the key requirements we're talking about is risk management, instant response. And as I said a moment ago, I don't think having an instant response plan is just good enough. You need to exercise that now and make sure that it works and is effective. Otherwise, you may as well not have one. And that's part of your business continuity then and overall business resilience, so you can keep doing what you do best. Supply chain security, secure development, auditing, documentation, training, cyber hygiene, and then all the way through to things like encryption and what that looks like in a post-quantum world. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there soon. So again, sort of key message from me is resilience requires organization-wide sort of coherence and working together. That's just a zoom in. So I'll make sure that they'll be available so you can look more into detail on that. But so one of the key takeaways from my perspective is the cyber engineering process is required to protect the product and the users from cybersecurity threats and risks throughout the entire life cycle, that's my bad, of the product, from concept through to decommissioning. So, like I said, think evil. So test misuse scenarios and negative scenarios. What could go wrong? How bad is it? And then assess that and select an appropriate control measure. See if there's, or test if there's unclear requirements, again, from sort of conceptual phase. All of you fantastic engineers go nuts for requirements, so that shouldn't be a problem. But ensure that they're all documented and raise and document security concerns, even if you're not responsible for fixing it. I think just ensuring that you're part of that ecosystem, working with your fantastic guys and girls in IT and the cyber domain. I already described that there's kind of a big disconnect in most cases of the people I work with and engage with. So just trying to bring everyone into the fold is really important from a culture perspective, because then you can all help each other do better. And then apply basic cyber hygiene. Again, nobody has to be a cyber expert, but there's some really basic and easy things you can do, like ensuring that you haven't got default admin passwords everywhere on bits of kit, things like that, just to I guess mitigate and limit that blast radius, as we call it. So if something does go wrong, how contained can it be, and how contained can you make it? So yeah, simple testing habits from a cyber perspective, not from a test perspective, can prevent major vulnerabilities or major incidents, or at least mitigate them. And if you're doing some of the basics right, you'll be better than 90% of other people that I come across. I'm just going to gloss over this one and talk more about this because, as Steve said, this is a sort of tried and tested thing. It exists. People do it, not just in defense and aerospace, but this is an example from the automotive sector, where this is what their secure by design process is. It's called ISO 21434. Don't expect you to remember the numbers. And it's just to illustrate that these things exist in the wild. They're being done well. And I think the automotive industry holistically is quite a strong sort of front runner outside of the super heavy regulated industries like defense and aerospace that we talked about. So this process exists and shows that you have to document, and there's a security requirement throughout the whole life cycle of the product. So again, back to the V model when we're talking about from concept all the way through to decommissioning. This is just to illustrate that it is there, it does exist. Looking at threat and risk analysis, it's required, deliverable as part of this ISO standard. And non-compliance in the automotive space can block your ability to do business. So if you're not meeting these standards, you cannot sell cars. Obviously, there's no car manufacturer on the planet that wants to be in that position. So it's enforced, and it's enforced well. So, key thing from my perspective, security is everyone's responsibility. It sounds a little bit cheesy, but I like to think of it like health and safety and the journey that's gone on, at least in the OT space. Everyone's really safety aware these days. It'll be great to see cyber go on a similar sort of maturity journey as that. Think evil when you're doing your great design work. What could go wrong? What could somebody do? And engage with your IT and cyber teams and get together. And secure systems build trust and resilience with your customers and partners. So again, it's not just about the immediate impact of a GDPR breach, but obviously there's long-term reputational damage potentially at risk if things do go wrong. And that's probably about it from me. Thank you very much.
Excellent. All right. So I wanted Morgan to come because he is an expert in the cybersecurity world more generally, more broadly. But now I want to narrow down into what does it look like for LabVIEW? What does cybersecurity for LabVIEW look like? And so I've invited Sarah Zalusky from JKI. She has very good insights into what is cybersecurity. You'll see why we have decided to partner with JKI for our cybersecurity tools.
Great, thanks for that, Steve. So Morgan's done a great job explaining cyber engineering in general and the wider process. And I want to talk a lot more about what we can do as LabVIEW developers or as leaders of LabVIEW development teams to get our house in order from a security perspective. A quick introduction, if you don't know us at JKI, we've been around about 25 years. We're primarily a custom software solutions company. But we also have a very long demonstrated track record of delivering really high quality software engineering tools to the LabVIEW community. So VIPM, the package manager, official package manager for LabVIEW, that shipped in 2005. We also have our open source unit test framework, Karaya, and a number of other open source packages and frameworks that we've contributed to the community over a long period of time. And starting in 2024, we've also been working on some security tools that we have used internally on some of our own projects. And we began sharing them with early access partners for them to start using the same tools and solving the same kinds of problems that we needed to solve ourselves. I want to talk briefly about the current security landscape. Right now, there's a massive regulatory shift that's going on. You've probably heard a lot recently about CMMC and CRA. A lot of this is driven by this technology transformation that's also taking place. AI is a big part of that. One consideration is that a lot of these systems that used to be run in isolation previously now need to be on a shared network. We're trying to aggregate data from a lot more systems together so that we can utilize these tools. And the challenge for LabVIEW teams, are many, but one of the things, most of the teams that we talk to really need security tools and they don't exist. Most of the teams that we talk to don't have a dedicated security staff. And similar to what Morgan was saying, one thing we've experienced is that if teams do have a cybersecurity team, they are usually part of IT. They don't necessarily understand how LabVIEW development is done. They don't necessarily understand how regulations apply to LabVIEW development and LabVIEW workflows. And until now, there's been a very significant tooling gap. So most of the commercial off-the-shelf tools that you can buy that are security focused, you either really don't work for LabVIEW or were not specifically designed for LabVIEW workflows. Another thing to call out is that in general, as LabVIEW developers, most of the systems that we work on control physical systems. So these are test and automation systems, control systems, they control physical processes. We validate critical components. These things live in the physical world. So if we do have a security breach, this is not just data exposure. This could be physical safety. This could be your production line going down. If you have a compromised test system, it could potentially, inject something bad into firmware or something into your product that then has a wider reach that goes outside of your test facility. So in order to make this problem of security more manageable, we have distilled this security regulatory space into these three fundamental concepts. And we've arrived at these three concepts that have very broad applicability and high importance across many of the standards, and also just cover general industry best practices. So the first of those is software supply chain. This is a topic that's been brought up a lot at this conference. This is essentially asking the question of what is in your software and is it safe? Security testing and remediation. So security testing in general is a very large topic. Today, we're going to focus on testing that you can do very early on in your development cycle. This is something that we as developers have a lot of control over. And then secure development process. Another key concept, and this is something that Steve called out, it's a requirement that you have a documented secure development process that you're following that considers early stage design and development. And it's also important that you're able to demonstrate that your team has followed the plan that they've outlined. So let's talk more about the software supply chain and why it matters. In general, our applications that we write and all of our business logic is just what is above the water. What's below the water is our supply chain. So these are all the things which are direct dependencies of your application. For us as developers, this is NI packages, VI packages. There are also platform dependencies, so things like LabVIEW runtime, LabVIEW RT, and all of the NI drivers. And then there's this large category of transitive dependencies, which could be a very large portion of your dependency tree. These are all the dependencies of your dependencies, and these could be third-party DLLs, they could be interop assemblies. And the risk here is that a lot of your exposure could come from these buried components, and a significant exposure in one of those transitive dependencies could have really big implications for your software. So it's important for us to understand not only what is in our software, but whether or not it's safe. In general, how do I answer this question of what is in my software? You need to generate a software bill of materials. This is a standardized, complete, machine-readable inventory of all the components that are in your software. You need unique identifying information for everything that's a primary dependency of your application. So the standard component name, version, supplier name, other unique identifiers. This might be the package repository link. Some SBOMs also have an enriched data set, which could include licensing information and restrictions. So if you have dependencies on third-party or open source components, they may have their own licensing terms attached to them. So it's important for us to know if we have any licensing restrictions in our software due to what's in our dependencies. So I've answered this question of what's in my software. How do I know if it's safe? MITRE has put together a very large database of CVEs. These are common vulnerabilities and exposures. I believe Morgan mentioned that in his talk earlier. But this is a very large data set that has documented instances of security flaws in software that exists in the wild. And if you were to go onto the CVE database website today and look for LabVIEW or NI components, you can find recent CVE information on there, along with mitigation guidance of what you need to do if you have this vulnerability in your system to correct. And oftentimes that's upgrading to the latest component or making sure we've applied the latest security patch. In practice, let's put this all together. How can I secure my software supply chain? The step one is generating an SBOM. And if you saw the keynote or listened to Jim Kring's presentation this week, we've been working closely with NI in order to solve this problem for everybody in the community so that they can generate a software bill of materials from their code base. The second step is that you need to evaluate your dependencies against known vulnerabilities that exist. You need to document what you find and correct it if you can. And then another important aspect that matters a lot, especially for CRA, is that our job is not done on day one when we validated we have no known vulnerabilities and we delivered our software. We need to continuously monitor over the entire life cycle of our product to ensure that any of our dependencies don't come up with known vulnerabilities. These are things that, the security landscape is changing constantly over time. An exploit could be found in one of your components, and you need to be able to patch software that you have in the field in order to correct that. So outside of the LabVIEW world, there are tools that are designed specifically to address this problem. They're called software composition analysis tools, and they do this for you automatically. So it's going to break down what is in your software, and it's going to provide this continuous monitoring service for you so that I can get a report and understand if I have new exposures over time. So we announced earlier this week that the basic SBOM generation capabilities will be available for everyone in LabVIEW starting in 2026 Q3. We also, as part of our security tools, are building out more features that will help you get visibility on your supply chain. So this is a screenshot. I'm going to do a demo of the tool a bit later on. This is a screenshot that shows you what the generated SBOM would look like in the tool. And we have provisions that would be coming later as part of our roadmap to help you manage the vulnerability monitoring. So I want to talk about security testing and what it is that we can find. Today, I want to talk specifically about static application security test. So in general, all software has bugs and all software has security flaws, just like all software has bugs. Regular testing can help you identify these issues, and you want to do that testing as early on in your process as possible. Issues are a lot easier and less expensive to fix the earlier on in your process you find them. So static analysis tools allow you to look for security weaknesses in your source code at the time development is done. And it does this by scanning your code for potential weaknesses. What is it exactly that we can detect with a static analysis tool? So there is a similar standard put together by MITRE to the CVEs we encountered earlier called CWEs, or the Common Weakness Enumeration. This is a very big dictionary that's technology and language agnostic, a set of data that describes in common terms security weaknesses that can exist in our code. And if CWEs are a new concept for you, I've provided some links here. JKI has talked extensively in the past about what CWEs are and how the standards map into the LabVIEW world and which things are important for LabVIEW. In general, there are two categories of weaknesses that we look for in our software. One of which is a more traditional that we might think about are things that are part of our attack surface. So this is anything that's at the boundary of our application and where it interacts with the outside world. So your user interface, we develop a lot of UIs as LabVIEW developers. Any input that comes from the user is a big part of our interaction to the outside world. File I/O, network comms, database operations, all of those sorts of things. And then the other category of weaknesses are things which are internal to our application. These are things that could cause instability in our application or might be exploitable. For example, things like race conditions, things like having deadlock. Maybe I have some root loop blocking functions that I'm calling in my code. Maybe I have an operation that's going to cause my CPU to rail. And an attacker might be able to exploit that in certain situations to take your system down or otherwise. I want to give one specific example of a CWE. So this is improper neutralization of special elements used in an OS command, which is a lot to say, but it's a type of command injection. And it's a particularly dangerous type of command injection because you're injecting commands directly into the command line. The way in which we can do this is with the system exec function in LabVIEW. And I have a simple example here to demonstrate the risk. So I have a simple utility. I'm taking in a process name from a user, and I'm returning the process ID. And in general, the string that goes in is the name of the process that I want to find. It's possible, if I do not sanitize my inputs, for a user to add additional data into this string. And in this case, this additional command is going to recursively delete all the files on the C drive quietly. Obviously, this is a very bad scenario. A static analysis tool can help you by identifying all the places where your sysexec function is being called. And it can understand from looking at your code how that call is being constructed to understand if it's safe, if it's doing correct input sanitization, if it's a constant wired to the block diagram. We have a different expectation of trust at edit time versus what a user might be injecting into your code. So I want to switch over to give you a quick demo of what the tool looks like today. So I have a desktop version of, this is both the static analysis tool and the SBOM generator. You can run both of them together. And I'm just going to run some demo code that I have for you so you can see what this looks like. I can select different rule sets. In this case, I'm going to select just the security rules. There are also some useful developer tools which are useful and interesting, but the focus is security. This tool is meant to be run from the command line and integrated into your normal CI/CD workflow or however you normally build your application. And while that's running, I just want to pop over to the documentation that we have for the product and show you some of the coverage that we have for the security roles. So here are some of the examples of CWEs that the tool can automatically go and check for and report on. There's also a second category of security rules called security checklists. These flag entire categories or groups of functions. So if I have a VI in which I'm doing network communication, I might want additional oversight with my dev team on those VIs because this is part of my attack surface. Same with file IO. And there are other situations where it's not necessarily a common part of the external attack surface, but they are more sensitive operations that could happen inside LabVIEW. For example, security checklist 6 is going to identify any common places where you might be doing memory management that is outside of the standard LabVIEW memory management. Okay, so let's see if our test has completed. It looks like it has. So I've created 2 artifacts, one of which is a CSV file. The other is a SQLite database, which contains my results. So let's go ahead and open this and explore some of what we found. So I've just opened the second part of the tool, which is a data explorer. This runs independently of the back-end crawling tool. But let's see what we found. So let's make this a little bit larger. So I can see in an overview that I ran 14 files. 7 of them were clear, no issues. 7 of them had issues. And let's take a look at what are the highest priority items that were found. So I see here I had one VI that was flagged as critical, and it's telling me that I had an insecure hard-coded string, which is CWE 798. So if I pop open this block diagram to look and see what is inside, I can see that I do in fact have a hard-coded credential in here. So the tool is going to identify situations where I have suspicious looking string constants on my block diagrams. And as a developer, I can come and either fix this, or maybe I want to say, this is acceptable, this is test code, it's never running in production. Other kinds of things that the tool can flag, here's an example of a deprecated function. In this case, it's doing an MD5 hash. One of the things that I want to call out is that the tool provides mitigation guidance to you and is a learning tool also for your team to understand why something has been flagged and what you can do to correct the situation. Here's another example where I have some deprecated functionality that's been flagged. In this case, these VIs are telnet functions, and they're part of the old internet toolkit that was deprecated in 2012. So this is something that's flagged as high priority because it's a significant security risk to my system. Now let's go and take a look at this same command injection situation that we talked about earlier. I'm going to go ahead and open that block diagram. So this has been flagged as a potential command injection, and I can see this is the same code that we saw previously. How can we fix this? So the way in which we've decided to fix this is that rather than having the process name passed directly as an argument into the command line, instead, we've constructed this such that we are requesting the full task list in CSV format to come out, and then we're subsequently parsing that data to look for the process name inside. So now this is a safe construction of the same call. Command injection is no longer possible in here. And if there was something additional in the process name, I could either skip it when I'm trying to do the matching or just decide that it's not going to be a match because it wasn't an exact string. So the other thing that I want to call out here is that as a developer tool, it's possible for me to now copy this bookmark that's in here and paste it into my block diagram. And I'm going to do my due diligence here and put my initials, and I'll put the date and save it. And now on the next scan, and I'll go ahead and just run this single VI so that we can see what it looks like. It will show up as evaluated. So if I go ahead and open this new one. Now the way in which this shows up in the tool is as evaluated. And I can see that my comments from the block diagram were pulled in. So if you need to have documentation that you're following your secure development framework that you've outlined, this is a very good way for you to track over time the things which you've corrected in your code base. And going back to the larger data set, the idea here is that over time, I'm going to get visibility on the health of my code base, and I'm going to see the number of resolved go further over to the right. Well, yeah, okay. So one other thing, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, but in addition to the SBOM generation and the static analysis tool, part of the suite also provides you with a full secure development plan. This is an extract of the full NASA 7150 process that we followed. But this is a very good starting point for your team to have an understanding of what you can do as LabVIEW developers to pull in some of these security elements as we develop on a regular basis. So it will outline security checklists for you. And there are certain things that the tool or an automated tool doesn't have enough context to be able to really find. There are things or considerations that may be part of your design process or part of your very early on development that a tool can't scan for. So an example of this is having sensitive data in your application. Only you can define what sensitive data in your application is. There are strategies when we design our software to make sure that sensitive data is encapsulated, that it's separated from other parts of our app, to make sure that it's secure in all of the places from the beginning of its lifetime to the end. Okay, I'm going to switch back over here. I do want to call out, so the JKI Security Suite is the first security-focused static analysis tool for LabVIEW. VI Analyzer is also a static analysis tool. Yeah.
You mentioned, did you say this will ship with LabVIEW in 2026?
No, so the SBOM generation capability will ship with LabVIEW. And the way this is integrated into the LabVIEW IDE as part of the build spec, there'll be an option for you to generate an SBOM that's associated with your build spec, and it will generate the JSON format file for you. But the rest of the security suite is not shipping with LabVIEW.
It's something we would get separately from JKI.
Correct, yes, yeah.
With the vulnerabilities, the CVE, how is that list maintained, added to, and the threat levels scored?
Yes, it's a great question. So for larger companies like NI, there's an official means by which you can report and contribute data to these databases. For open source tools or other things which exist in the LabVIEW community, there's no data set that exists right now. This is something that we also want to work with the community to address. It's a problem for all of us, right? We have OpenG, we have a bunch of open source packages that are in our production shipping tools. And CRA requires that you're now responsible for any of those components that you have in your code. So I think officially for CRA, any of those independent vendors would need to contribute vulnerability data to those data sets. JKI may also be able to help with VIPM.io infrastructure, for example, to help collect some of this data for the community so that we can report appropriately. So it's on our roadmap. I'd be happy to continue the conversation offline about that. Any other questions? We see VI Analyzer as a complementary tool. This is great. It's extensible out of the box. It's great for finding style issues or other kinds of bugs. Our tool is security focused. You can use them together. Yes.
And the JKI security suite that you're showing us, that is available right now.
It's available right now. So we began early access in 2024, and we've had it in the hands of many customers that are using it on their production systems. So officially this week, we are out of early access. It's generally available. Yeah.
And the format of those reports, because like VI Analyzer, you can customize it to integrate with this.
So the main format of that database, it's a SQLite database. We provide you with the schema. So if you wanted to do your own reporting, you could. So it's CSV format. The SBOM is the standard Cyclone DX JSON format.
Okay.
Can you write your own tests?
Right now, no, but it's a consideration. And if you want to write your own static analysis test, you can use VI Analyzer to do that. Yeah.
You would have to merge manually. If you wanted it in the same report.
If you wanted it in the same report, right now that wouldn't be possible. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? I just wanted to highlight again, this is meant to be a part of your pipeline. There's a rich command line interface. Most of our customers are running it in that way. Secure development process. This is a requirement for standards like CRA. It's really important that we consider security from very early on and throughout every phase of the software development lifecycle. And adding on to a lot of what Morgan talked about earlier, our secure development is also only a small part of the full secure engineering process. But this is a part that we have more control over. Right, and I talked a little bit about the cybersecurity SDP. This is something that we'll provide training on as well as part of the security suite. We see it as foundational or a starting point for your team. You don't necessarily need to adopt the whole process from end to end, but there's a lot of inspiration and things that you can bring into your established process that you already have to augment what you're already doing. So key takeaways. This can feel very overwhelming right now, especially with all of the regulatory drivers that are being thrown at us. If we can break down the problem and we can use the correct kinds of tools, which is the same way that communities outside the LabVIEW community have traditionally solved this problem, we can make a lot of progress and improve our security posture without a huge amount of resources from our engineering teams. So software supply chain, just to recap, understanding what is in your software and whether it's safe to use. You need to generate an SBOM. You need to do the job of CVE monitoring. Traditional tools that address this are called software composition analysis tools. Another thing to call out is that if your company is already using other software composition analysis tools, the standard SBOM format file that you generate could likely be pulled into that other tool to do monitoring for anything that's already in those public databases. For security testing and remediation, we only covered a subset of the types of security tests that you can do in our talk today, which is a static application security test. The kinds of deliverables that you have from running these tests would be scan reports. So an export of the Explorer dashboard, for example, would be enough to document that you've found issues, you've addressed them. This is good from a compliance perspective. That would cover remediation evidence. And then secure development process, making sure that security is not just bolted on to the end of your process, that it's considered from early on. You need to have a document that demonstrates what it is that you're going to do, and then you will need records of adherence. And one way that we do this, for example, that's covered in our SDP is using pull requests, for example, to ensure that if developer review is part of your workflow, this is a good automated way that you could track that you've had oversight on code commits over time. And that's it for now. So please. Yep.
I was going to make one quick comment.
Go ahead.
So I'm Jamie Smith. I'm also with JK. I work closely with Sarah. I just wanted to say that the product's released, but there is an active roadmap, and Sarah and I help manage that. But if there is something that someone needed more quickly we are a software services company, so we could accelerate a roadmap item or work under contract to do something very specific. And we've got conversations with companies in that vein already.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Jamie.
Excellent. And thanks to Sarah for that. I think whether or not you decide to use their tool, it's interesting to see the process that they've constructed around it that they're trying to satisfy with the tool, just so you kind of know what you're up against if you, as you get into all this. But I really appreciate the structure that she's put into it, and appreciate Morgan for the insights that he provided today. The cybersecurity world is changing very quickly. There's a lot of threats coming, and we're all kind of converging to, I think, to a final solution of what cybersecurity will look like. I think the next 2 years are going to be very interesting and very busy for all of us, and we're going to have to figure out how to deal with all of it. But we'll work on it together. NI is committed to providing what we can and leading out in that space and making sure that you're ready to continue to be able to use our tools in that space. But I guess that's it. That's the end of NI Connect. So thanks for coming.